So let's begin with some of your major stories that we'll be chewing tonight. After years of back and forth, today it appears the jinx is broken. President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the Petroleum Industry Bill 2021 into law. The presidency states that President Buhari signed the bill into law while in quarantine after his arrival from the United Kingdom, and the ceremonial part of the new legislation will be done on Wednesday after the days of mandatory isolation would have been fulfilled. The Petroleum Industry Act provides legal, governance, regulatory, and fiscal framework for the Nigerian petroleum industry, the development of host communities, and related matters. The Senate had passed the bill on the 15th of July, and the House of Reps followed suit on the 16th of July. The act is expected to replace the obsolete Petroleum Act of 1969. The PIB was first brought to the National Assembly in 2008, but it faced several obstacles while undergoing numerous provisions and debates. There was some progress in 2015, however, when the House of Reps passed a version, but it didn't go through at the Senate. A hot debate at the National Assembly a few weeks ago over allocation of host communities typified the contentious nature of the bill. There have been reactions to the signing already. NITI, the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, is speaking on this, and this is what they said, and I quote, "The new law has opened a new phase of wider opportunities in the oil and gas industry for us in NITI. President Buhari has broken new grounds, created new business horizon, built on healthy legal frameworks that will push the boundaries of reforms in the sector with realistic optimism for inflow of investment, revenue growth, and job opportunities." But PANDEV, a socio-political group, is not happy. And in their statement today, the release, they say, and I quote, "It is quite unfortunate that President Muhammadu Buhari went ahead to assent to the Petroleum Industry Bill despite the overwhelming outcry and condemnation that greeted its passage by the National Assembly, especially with regards to the paltry 3% provision for the host communities development trust fund and the brazen appropriation of an outrageous 30% of NNPC limited profit for a dubious, nebulous frontier oil exploration fund. This PIB falls way short of the expectations of the oil and gas producing communities that bear the brunt of unconscionable industry operation." So much to talk about on this one. The pros and the cons. We're breaking it down for you tonight. We get a political side to this, and of course we get the expert opinion on what this means for Nigeria and the oil and gas industry. We have a federal lawmaker and opposition member in the House of Representatives, Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who joins us from the United States. Thank you so much, Honorable. And we have an economist, Mr. Bismarck Rewane. Thank you so much, Mr. Rewane, for joining us tonight. Let's begin with...
Thank you for having me.
The Honorable. Honorable, does this meet your expectation because of the debate was intense on the floor? What you passed, is it the same thing that the document that was ascended to today?
Of a truth, I cannot say because I have not seen what was signed. But what we passed has some areas of reservation that I wasn't comfortable with. First of all, I must acknowledge the fact that we need the PIB. We cannot properly, explore or activate the potential of the downstream without the PIB. And there is need to take away the unnecessary government interference. However, what has kept the PIB in the limbo this long was the political aspect, the ethnic part of it, that unfortunately becomes the order of the day in major legislation in Nigeria. Section 371H2 of the Senate version that gave monopoly of import to certain entity, to me, as an economist, is not in good light. So I don't know if that version is what is signed. Two, the controversy of the 3% to oil-producing communities and the frontline exploration are two other reasons why some of us have reservation. But as per the overall importance of PIB, it cannot be underestimated. However, these shortcomings or limitations will subject it to more political interpretation than what it should be. I am of the opinion that the frontline exploration is an opportunity to create slush funds for certain individual group of people who will not have access to the fund as it is now. Federal government controlling the business as of now to give unnecessary opportunity to those who can take unchecked resources from the Federation account. That is exactly what that frontline exploration will do. And 30% to me is huge. First of all, let me correct this, that is in the public domain by some people, that oil exploration in the Niger Delta was funded by money from cocoa or granite. My check showed that none of such thing is true. Oil exploration in Niger Delta were carried out by companies with their resources. When they found oil, they defrayed their cost from that. So for us to provide 30%, I'm not sure we should not provide a certain amount for alternative source of energy, because we should not have this funny impression that oil will be in perpetuity. So I'm of the opinion that would have taken maybe 5% for alternative research into energy, but to take 30% for frontline exploration, I'm sincerely not happy with it. And I think we create room for certain blocks, certain interest group politically to have a doubt of this about the sincerity of our intention. That's areas I'm not comfortable with for now. However, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, if you look at this, it's a bill that's been elusive for several years, presented most of the National Assembly in the last 3 or 4 cycles, and nothing has come out of it. For a Buhari presidency that says, I will make sure that this happens, and this administration that somewhat hasten or sped it up, would you give some, I know you're in the opposition, but is there any political praise for the Buhari government on this?
Yeah, you cannot deny that fact. Like you said in your introduction, in 2015, the House of Representatives passed a version that was not passed by Senate. At that time, we gave 20% to host community, which is now 3%. And for the president to have the privilege of having it, make it becoming into law now, you cannot take away such a accolade and advantage. However, it presents certain reality to the Nigerian political situation that there is some undertone privileges given to certain section of the country to get what they want, because this version is actually what certain section of the country wanted. And that is what have kept the law in limbo for now. So those who feel that they have lost out will continue to agitate, and they will not be comfortable with this law. I feel as a lawmaker that in as much that there's no perfect law anywhere, but there is a sense of equity. There should be a sense that everybody feels that their interest is adequately taken care of. That is the only limitation I find in the law. But the fact that it is signed is a step in the right direction. I believe that those who are not comfortable with certain area will challenge it either by coming for amendment or go to court to make sure that what they feel is an infringement or undue advantage to certain section of the country will be corrected. So I think it's a step in the right direction.
Let's get some expert opinion from Mr. Bismarck Rewane. This will go a long way to affect what is our mainstay of our economy, oil and petroleum in Nigeria. So, Mr. Bismarck, what does the passage or the signing of this law means for the oil and gas sector in Nigeria?
First of all, it brings to an end a never-ending journey which started 20 years ago. And the first bill went to the National Assembly 13 years ago. So an imperfect bill is better than no bill, and better late than never. But what we need to understand is that there are four major elements of this bill. One is the governance. The governance, so NNPC will be incorporated into a commercial venture. As a matter of fact, NNPC announced recently that they'll be paying their first dividend in September this year. There'll be two regulatory bodies, one for the upstream and then one for midstream and downstream, right? Then there's the governance is there, and then there'll be what they call incorporated joint ventures rather than having cash calls. So Nigeria's investment in this thing will be covered by an incorporated joint venture, just like the LNG model. So that brings brings to an end the abuse by NNPC officials in the running of the companies. But don't forget, Nigeria is lagging many other countries in terms of its level of investment in the upstream, right? And attempts to make it, to Nigerianize the upstream, midstream, and downstream has met with a lot of pushback, one, and lack of capital to invest in this particular. So there's a shortage of capital. And obviously, those who have read the Seven Sisters will know how this thing works. So we need the governance addresses one issue. The fiscal framework, which are the incentives, which will encourage people to invest, both domestically and internationally in this whole spectrum, is important. It also means that if you look at oil contributes 10% of our GDP, but contributes 75 to 80% of our foreign exchange earnings, 70% of our fiscal revenues, and when you take LNG and add it to oil, you have 95% of your revenues. So directly and indirectly, this is the goose that lays the golden egg. So we've got to nurture it, even though the obsolescence of oil is a declining function of time right now, one. Two, the irrelevance of OPEC is staring at us in the face. So we have to make hay whilst the sun is shining, even though the cloud is overcast. So we've dealt with, one, the governance of NNPC, the commercialization of NNPC, the question of the fiscal framework. Then we also have the gas, monetization of gas, and the gas incentives so that the royalties are brought down, and therefore people will invest in gas because Nigeria is more of a gas producer than an oil producer, right? So when you look at that, we have to harness this and use it, especially now that because of the climate accord, the European banks and international banks have been asked not to lend money to those who are pursuing fossil fuels. Finally, the big elephant in the room is the host community and the 3%. All right? So there's 3%. Is 3% the ideal optimal compensation for the oil-producing communities? I would say no, because I come from there. But at the same time, we've got to ask what is more important to the oil-producing communities, like where I come from, is the transparency of how the money that is coming there is spent and the impact you have, rather than having a tea party. Now, the question is, we have the NDDC, we have the derivation fund, we have this one, but everything has to be harnessed together. And I'm not sure that it is fair for the oil-producing countries who suffer. And if you look at it, you go there, compared to other parts of the country where they produce no oil, and see the level of affluence and the level of multidimensional poverty, the level of theft and fraud and deprivation. These communities, it is rape, and that's what's happening. So let me say that an imperfect bill is better than no bill. The host community issues are going to be seriously debated, and the problem is that the time between misunderstanding and violence, which used to be maybe 12 months, 6 months, is much shorter today. You will find that misunderstanding and violence and squabbles and political disruption is going to be the bane of this thing, because of everybody in town wants to be a traditional ruler. Everybody in town says, what is the host community? If a pipe passes through your home. So there are many issues, but let me say once and for all that it is symbolic. It is a major milestone that this bill has been assented into law. Now, what are we going to do to amend it, to make it fair, to make it equitable, to make it optimal? Because that's the challenge of the lawmakers. Mind you, how many of the lawmakers come from the oil-producing communities? How many? The people that are how many of the top echelons of NNPC and the oil companies come from the oil-producing? So the oil-producing communities have actually been shortchanged, been ripped off, And that's why they resort, in most cases, to bunkering and so many of the dysfunctional activities.
But Mr. Rewane, you've made a very critical point here that they've been ripped off in the communities where the explorations happen. But will this bill or this law change anything?
Yeah, it's a beginning. It's a long journey. It will change. It changes. It's the beginning of a process, right? The ideal type is a mental construct. It's utopian. The real type is the actual reality that we deal with. So the law as signed today is the reality, but we move from the real to the ideal. And that utopian, that journey is what we are. So let me say that this is the beginning of a long journey. It is not the final destination. Like they say, it's better to travel hopefully than to arrive.
A lot of things are happening at the same time. Dangote is working on its refinery. The federal government is working on rehabilitating 3 of the 4 refineries. Whether or not there is any correlation in all of these with this law coming on stream. But the question is, for my audience and my viewers, whom I'm passionate about their interests right now, is what is in it for them? Can you tell us, in practical terms, any food on the table for them that will better the quality of their lives in any way, Mr. Rewane? I know you're a very frank person. Yes. Would the law change anything for them directly in the immediate?
Let me analyze it. So let me analyze it. 1, the law makes the regulation, it institutionalizes the regulation and liberalization of the downstream, which means that subsidies, theoretically speaking, subsidies are gone. If subsidies go away, the amount of government revenue available to be shared and used for the people theoretically is higher. 1. 2, the higher the investments in exploration and production in the country, the more the oil revenues that accrue to the country and the more the people. So yes, the revenue profile of Nigeria will change, but how the revenue is spent and the impact of that expenditure on the lives of people is a different kettle of fish. It's completely different. But if you don't have the revenue, then you can't even hold people to account on how they spend it. So this addresses the investment, addresses the revenue. Then the Nigerian people will demand good governance from their leadership. And let me make it clear. The fact that you pass this law today does not mean that people are going to rush over themselves to come and invest. They are going to wait and see that what the law says, what the people, my brother there is saying about what the lawmakers are saying, and what the actions of Nigerians are will determine whether there will be new investments. But don't be deceived that if you think that tomorrow morning you wake up after this bill has been signed and that it's going to be El Dorado, no, there's work to be done. And Nigeria will have to now prove beyond reasonable doubt that 1, it has passed the law, 2, it is serious about it, and 3, it's willing to use the revenues for the well-being of its people.
Let me go back to the politician, the honorable member of the House, Honorable Yusuf. Give us a sense of how you feel about this. Do you feel, how do you feel? Don't let me describe it. Sorry, I want it to come from you. I wanted to know exactly how you feel. Being a member of this National Assembly that made this happen, how do you feel? And does this open another horizon or a frontier when the Nigerian government says we have a revenue problem? Does this actually open your eyes as a lawmaker to another possibility of solving Nigeria's problems?
Yeah, it's a mixed feelings. I must agree with you and with Rewane Ishmael that is a step in the right direction. Like I said, I was in the House when the attempt was made to pass in 2015, and I wasn't happy. I felt disappointed that we didn't succeed on that. That we have passed it now, I must acknowledge the fact that we are taking a step in the right direction. However, what I'm saying is that because one thing about a law, no matter how good the law is, if the perception is that some people feel unjustly treated, that would take away the good in the law and it will make the good to become a backbencher. So that's what my audience are concerned. I don't want unnecessary political perception that will take away the good of the PIB. That was why at the point of passage, I was consistently against certain things I felt were too political. Nothing kept the PIB this long than politics. Regionalism, ethnic sentiment, and what have you. And that is the bane of Nigeria political development and economic development. You can't divorce politics and economy. So I will agree with it is past now. However, like the Bismarck said, it's a long journey to come. We have a lot of areas that we need to deal with so as to help in deepening the conviction of our people on the PIB. Because the people have a buy-in, they have a conviction that this is our law, that that is a law meant for us and for us. So that is just the area of my contention. I'm not really comfortable.
Thank you so much, Honorable Yusuf. Let me get Mr. Bismarck Rewane's final thought. We're due for breaking just 40 seconds or thereabout. Mr. Rewane, your final thought on this bill going forward.
Final thoughts are that, look, for you in Lagos, for somebody in Abuja, for somebody in Kaduna and Kano, it means nothing. You know, you are going to get more money, maybe. But for the man sitting down in Warri, in Escravos, in Igorodo, in Boni, in Okrika, and all these other places, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change until there's transparency, accountability, good governance, and the people will not feel any commitment whatsoever. Nothing will stop that until there's fair play, equity, and justice in the dispensation of oil management in Nigeria, so that the people can have a skin in the game and they will not feel left behind. That is, I'm telling you, as a member of the host communities and the people that produce this oil that suffer from environmental degradation and the struggle for self-determination in Nigeria.
Those are very deep thoughts there. And another big question would be the role of the state government. And in the scheme of practicing federalism, politically speaking, how much of these resources the state can also say is their own. That's another conversation for another day. But we must leave it at that. I must sincerely thank you, the panel tonight, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, economist, and the Executive Director of Financial Derivatives, our friend here, right here in the House, and Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, member of the House of Representatives representing Kogi State and the House of Reps, and a member of the PDP. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your thought. Thank you.